welcome you to another episode of the Southern Gal Show. We're going to make a tomato sheet pan, a sage kind of crust with a tomato filling on it. Okay, we're going to start with making a crust for this tomato slab pie. It's really a sheet pan. We're going to make these on a sheet pan. I like to do sheet pan dinners. I like to do roasted vegetables on sheet pans. They're just really easy. And this is a pretty easy recipe. So we're going to use 2½ cups of plain flour, AP flour, and a cup of whole wheat flour. And I'm going to put those in our food processor. This dough is really simple because it is made in the food processor. And to that, we're going to add the zest of a lemon in a minute, a ½ teaspoon of black pepper, 1 1/2 teaspoons of just regular salt, 2 cloves of garlic, and I'm going to just roughly chop those in just a minute, and a ½ cup of fresh sage. Now I'm going to just roughly chop this because the food processor is going to do most of the work for us, but it does need a little bit of a rough chop, so just kind of chop it up. It's not a fine chop, it doesn't take but a minute. Throw that in. And we have a tablespoon of sugar here too. We're going to use in a minute, but we're going to save that with our zest to add it in just a minute. And I've got a ½ cup of cold ice water. Now I had ice in here, and then I took the ice out and I just measured out a ½ cup of cold ice water. And I've got 2½ sticks of cold butter. You want things really cold, your ice water cold and your butter cold. We'll get to that in a minute. We're going to take this as fresh sage. We're going to use a ½ cup, so I'm going to pick this out of my garden this morning, even though it's winter time. It was still growing, so I had plenty of fresh sage. You can use dried sage if you don't have fresh. You just might use a little bit less of it, but this is a ½ cup of fresh. I'm going to pick it off, and I'm going to just roughly chop it. Please, I've already washed it. So it's good to go. Now in the summer, I grow this all summer in pots. The leaves get really big, but this time of year, they're not going to be nearly as big. And this is pretty much all I had in the garden. So, won't have any more probably till spring. It's getting too cold. We had snow this weekend, and so it'll kind of take care of it. We chopped the sage. Got it all picked off of the stems. Now, if you don't want sage, you could do thyme or do some other kind of herb. You could mix sage and thyme too. But just decide what you like. I love sage, and so I'm really happy by using the sage. So just roughly chop it. You'll get a ½ cup. You don't have enough, just use some dried. This is all I have picked, so this is all the fresh I have. I'm not going to go buy it for that. I'll just use some dried. Like I said, you could use dried if you wanted to. It's mainly for flavor. I have put sage in pizza crust, and I put thyme in it, and I put rosemary a little bit, garlic, different flavors. And this, I believe that's right at 1½ cup what I had. Wonderful. Awesome there. We're going to add that in. We're going to pulse this a little bit to get it mixed, kind of pulse it. In the refrigerator, at least 30 minutes. Actually, mine's been in there longer. You can leave it overnight up to a day or two. We've got some plastic wrap here that it's on, but I'm going to pick it up, and I'm going to use my plastic wrap to help roll it out so it won't stick as much, and I won't have to use as much flour. And I'm going to use a little bit of flour. Okay, I'm going to flour my surface here just slightly. We're going to flatten this out, and it's cold, so it's going to take a little bit of softening up, but you don't want it too soft because that butter will start melting. You just want enough you can work with it. And flatten it down as much as you can. And then we want to roll it out to the size of a sheet pan. And my sheet pan is this long. I've got my finger right there. So I'm going to make it that long, which is about right there and right there. So you can use a ruler, but I'm not going to right now. I put a little bit of flour on the inside of my plastic wrap, and we're going to start rolling this out. I'll turn it this way so I get my length, and then I'll worry about the width. Just roll it out gently. It's going to be a little tough at first, but again, if you work with it, it's going to start softening up too. So just work with it a little bit. Don't just let it set out and get soft. That's not the goal. Work and get too soft. Just work with it. Okay, to make the filling, we have 1/4 cup of cream cheese and softened, but I'm going to beat it in a minute. We have a cup of mayonnaise. We have a cup of full fat buttermilk. We have 2 eggs beaten, a teaspoon of lemon. I'm going to put in 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. My cheeses are white cheddar and sharp cheddar. Got about 1/2 cup of each. So we're going to first just cream this. We're going to cream this cream cheese just a tiny bit. Again, it needs to be softened, otherwise you're going to have a hard time getting it all mixed up. Cream cheese is optional. Some people put it in, some don't. I like a little cream cheese in there, but if you want to leave it out, you can. Then we're going to add in our mayonnaise. Again, it's a cup of mayonnaise. A lot of mayonnaise, but it's a good, rich Southern Tomato Pie. I'm going to put in a cup of full fat buttermilk. Let's get it all in there. I'm adding my teaspoon of lemon and my eggs. 2 eggs, and I've kind of beaten them up here. And I grind my own pepper. I just think it's better. I grind it fresh in my little spice mill, and I grind my own sea salt. And I've got this ground pretty fine. That's the way I really like it. It really tastes good. It's so much better than salt that has chemicals in it. And pepper, freshly ground, is always best. But I do grind it up in small batches and keep it ahead of time. I don't grind it fresh every time I use it. Some people do. And we're going to add our cheeses in a minute. I'm just going to mix this up really well. Start on low so it won't splash all over you. Beat it per se, you just want to get it mixed up. And that is mixed up. In my cheeses. That's the end of that. It's a very simple filling to make. The crust is well worth making. Now you could use a bought crust obviously, but that sage crust is what makes this, in my opinion. It is just super good. It's a really good crust. You can make it up, like I said, ahead of time. Keep it a couple days in your fridge. But once you make it, that's the way you'll make it from then on, because it really is that good. So we'll come back and pour this into our par-baked filling and finish up with our little cherry tomatoes. We'll cut them in half and put them on top. The oven's preheated to 400, and we'll bake it about 15 to 20 minutes. Just check it. When it gets good and brown and set, it's done. Out of the oven, this is really hot, so I'm not going to pick it up. It's just barely set. It's been in there about 20 minutes. I'm going to pour the topping over it. Spread it out. Our mayonnaise and cheese and eggs and onions and all the good things we had in there. Mid-south to the south, and I guess people up north maybe too, but we grow fresh tomatoes down here in the summer, and that's when you really want to make a lot of tomato pies, but they're very good any time of the year. You can make them. We're going to put our tomatoes on. I'm not going to put the juice on. I'm just going to scatter the tomatoes about. You're going to have to try this. You're going to love it. If you like tomatoes, cheese, eggs, I think you're going to love it. Onions. We're going to put some basil on when we get these on here. You don't want the juice. That salt that I put on pulled some of the juice out, which is good. That's what you want to do. You just don't want them real juicy. Just kind of spread them where they'll be sort of somewhat even if you bite it over the pie. I've got some dried basil. I said I don't have fresh. If you had fresh, you could put fresh basil leaves on it right before you take it out and just kind of let them wilt. But I'm just going to sprinkle in some dry. Got about a tablespoon or so here. And it will be good on there. Just going to spread it out, cover it up. Then we're going to put this back in the oven and bake it. could even throw some oregano on there if you wanted to. Oregano. I'm going to bake this about 18 to 20 more minutes, and then we'll be finished.